change the world, bring peace on earth. So thanks again very much for coming. I'm going to introduce Tulsi Gabbard. Could we give her a round of applause?
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.
Give Cullen a round of applause, please. That's the first time he's done this in front of a group of people for the campaign. And on that note, I'd love to take the opportunity, if there are any veterans who are here today or military families, if you could just stand and let us thank you as well for your service. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. So great to see you all here. I appreciate you making the time. We've had a wonderful day here in Plymouth walking around. Thank God for the sunshine. I didn't have to wear a big, thick jacket. You know, my blood is a little more thin coming from the islands than many of you out here. But we really are loving the time that we're getting here in New Hampshire. We are 16 days away from Election Day now. I am definitely counting. And we're taking advantage of every single one of those days. I'm here through the duration until Election Day, really getting across our message. I've gotten asked by a few different reporters, some local reporters and some others who are saying, Tulsi, don't you know that in this nationalized campaign that more and more politicians are just saying, you know what, we've got to get our ads up on TV and just focus on the national message and reaching people through kind of the mainstream and the corporate media. And they're not spending the kind of time that has traditionally been spent in presidential campaigns doing the kind of grassroots, person-to-person, town-by-town town halls that I think New Hampshire has been known for. They're like, so what's with it? You're going the traditional route, and the others are kind of taking the more national approach. And what I've shared with them is just how much it means to me to be able to not only share a room like this with you to share my message and the kind of leadership that I seek to bring, but through these conversations, through spending time walking down Main Street, going shop to shop, I get to listen. I get to better understand the thoughts, concerns, challenges, hopes, opportunities, dreams of people in towns just like yours. And I think that's really important to bridge this divide that we have, where Washington is in a bubble that is so disconnected from the reality of the lives that people are living all across our country. All of that is to say, I'm really appreciating this experience and the time that all of you are sharing with me here. I will make 2 points, and then we'll open it up and start the conversation tonight. I'd love to hear what's on your mind, thoughts or concerns you would like to share, and any questions that you have that I can answer for you as you think through making this decision as we head to Election Day. Number one is, how do we bridge the divide as a country? Because no matter what issue we talk about, no matter what issue we raise, these problems that we have found to be perpetuating election after election, we're not seeing solutions to these problems because of the hyper-partisan divide in Washington. This paralysis, this gridlock, this us versus them mentality that's all really centered around how do we either regain power or maintain power, depending on which party is in power at any given time. And that being the driver of the decisions that are being made, that being the driver of what bills are allowed to come to the House floor for a vote. And I think this is a huge problem. It's a huge problem, not only because we have a Washington that's not of, by, and for the people, it's of, by, and for the powerful elite, but we're seeing how this divisiveness is impacting our country as well. How we have friends, family members, people maybe who we work with who don't talk to each other anymore because of who they voted for, or who they voted against. It's gotten to such a point now, and I've been on the receiving end of this almost on a daily basis, where we are divided based on which cable news network we watch, right? Oh, you watch Fox News? How dare you? I don't want to talk to you. Oh, you watch MSNBC? I don't want to talk to you. CNN? Nope, sorry, don't want to talk to you. It's a little bit extreme when we just step back and kind of laugh a little bit about where we've come, but we know this is true. I go on every platform possible to be able to share my message with the country because I'm asking for the privilege of being able to serve all Americans, not just people who watch one channel but not another, not just people who are part of my party or my team but not the others. No, I'm asking to be able to serve all Americans and respect all Americans as a result, and will go and take advantage of these platforms to speak to millions of people at any given time. But because some of the presidential candidates have been very public about their decision not to go on Fox News, for example, and I'm willing to do so and take advantage of those opportunities to speak to the millions of people who watch that channel, I get criticized, not because of the substance of anything that I'm saying, because my message is consistent, no matter where I am and who I'm talking to, but simply for actually going and using that platform to talk to the people who watch Fox News, I get massive criticism. People on Twitter, that's it, she went on Fox News one too many times, not voting for her. That's it, she needs to be canceled. That's it, delete your account. It would be hilarious if the consequences weren't so serious. It would be hilarious if this was all just a big joke and we could all go laugh it off at the end of the day. But it's coming, unfortunately, from a place of very real vitriol and divisiveness. And this is the challenge that we have before us. You know, Cullen opened it up saying, you know, if we want change, if we want to fix the problem, we actually can do something about it. It starts in our everyday lives. It starts in the conversations that we're willing to have with each other. It starts with treating each other with respect, even if there are many issues we disagree on, even if we don't fully understand each other's perspective, but still taking that time to actually listen, because there's not enough listening going on today. If we took that time and we showed that respect to one another, I think we would find that we really have far more in common than we realize. When we gather in this space, or any space for that matter, and we begin with what we share in common, that we are all fellow Americans, that we stand on this common ground in this country, this bedrock of our Constitution and Bill of Rights, that we are all fellow Americans and therefore all vested in the future of our country. And it's up to us to determine what that future looks like. If this is the place where we are starting, absolutely there is a path forward for us to begin to build that future, to strive together towards that more perfect union. It's a very practical thing. It's a very practical change that we can make every day. Maybe reaching out to somebody who we haven't talked to for a while, or sparking a conversation with a total stranger and beginning to talk about the things that we care most about. This isn't about, I get a lot of people, oh, I hate politics. I hate politics. I don't want to talk about politics. I agree. I hate politics too. Believe it or not. But you know what I love is I love our country. I care very much for my loved ones. I care very much for communities like the one I come from in Hawaii and like yours here in Plymouth. And I really want to do something about the problems that we face. And that's really what we share in common. This is the kind of change we need to get leaders in Washington to do themselves. That we've got to hold leaders to a higher standard to say, even if you have personal differences, every one of us, every member of Congress is elected not to serve themselves, but to serve you and to represent you and to be your voice and your interests. And how can you do that if you're not willing to work with your colleagues to get those things done? It's something that every one of us has to do in our jobs or at school or within our families every day. But for some reason, this is just left on the sidelines in Washington. When I first got elected in 2012, I was a freshman Democrat coming in to a very strong Republican majority. And so what we're talking about here is getting things done is something I had to figure out pretty quick, because the institutional quote unquote wisdom, not very wise, but the wisdom was that because Republicans are in charge, Democrats can't get any legislation passed. And that when the tables are turned and Democrats are in charge, Republicans just have to stand by and they can't get any legislation passed. I wasn't willing to kind of stand on the sidelines and just do nothing just because Republicans are in the majority in the House. So I just started to think about, how can I start to build relationships? How can I start to reach out and get to know all of, 433 members of Congress not from Hawaii, to build that rapport, to push the legislation I was interested in leading forward. So I started with the most basic thing that I know and that I love, which is the language of food, to be able to open those doors. My mother makes this incredible macadamia nut toffee, and I asked if she would make 434 boxes of this toffee for every single member of Congress. And then I asked if she would make another 435 larger boxes of toffee for the staff of every member of Congress. And she's amazing. My parents raised 5 kids. She is a warrior, and she understood why this was important, so she agreed to do it. She said it might take a little while. That's a lot of toffee. But she got to work in Hawaii. She's stirring 2 pots on the stove at the same time, chopping the mac nuts, getting it going. My dad called me and he said, honey, I just want to let you know, I am tasting 1 piece out of every pan that she pours to make sure that it's top notch. Thanks, Dad, for your contributions. And while they were doing that, I was in DC and just started handwriting personal notes to every one of my colleagues, just introducing myself and signing every note saying, I look forward to serving with you. We started to deliver these gifts of aloha and very quickly got responses. That on the House floor, mostly during votes, which is the only time every member of Congress is in the same room together. Senior members of Congress, chairmen of powerful committees, members of Congress from other parts of the country who normally I would not have the chance to interact with, honestly, who normally probably would not give me the time of day, started looking for me, saying, hey, where is this new member of Congress from Hawaii? Finding me on the House floor and just saying thank you so much. Saying, most of them, I ate all the candy, I need more before I can go home this weekend. And then most importantly, saying, hey, tell me what's going on in your district. What are the issues that you want to work on now that you're here in Congress? Let's work together. Let's work together. People who were total strangers, people who the institutions in Washington said would be unwilling to work with me after that simple, single gesture of just reaching out as a person, saying, hey, let's work together, let's serve together, building that foundation of trust and respect that allowed me as a member of Congress, a freshman Democrat in the minority, to be effective for my constituents, to achieve that objective that I was going there to achieve. I passed my very first bill that I introduced as a member of Congress into law in a record period of time. Was able to pass amendments to larger pieces of legislation that people said was impossible to do. And it was only possible because when I made those calls to my colleagues asking for their support, I got my phone calls returned. They listened with an open mind when I said, hey, here's why this bill is important. Here's who it'll help. Some of them didn't agree, and they said, okay, I hear you, but I can't be with you on this one. But many more said, okay, hey, that makes sense. That makes sense. You have my vote. And they knew that when they called me, when they needed support for their legislation, that they could make that pitch and make their argument based on substance and know that I would listen with an open mind and make the decision that I felt would best serve our country. This is the kind of leadership that we need in Washington, where the hyperpartisanship is checked at the door. And we have leaders representing the diversity of our country. Yes, in race and religion and ethnicity and all of these other things, but the diversity in ideas that we have, bringing that representation, putting country first and saying, hey, let's get to work. This is not a burden, this is an opportunity where when we listen and bring our different perspectives, we can come up with the strongest possible solutions that can help move us forward. No one gets everything that they want, as in life, but we are able to move closer towards accomplishing that mission of ushering in a new era of leadership and a bright future for our country. So I think I open with this because throughout this presidential primary and this campaign, you're hearing a lot of different ideas and plans and bills and things being put forward by different candidates who are running for president. But unless you have a president that will be able to bridge these divides and work with leaders in Congress from both parties, those big ideas will only remain big ideas, never actually able to be enacted into law. It's this same spirit of respect and aloha and leadership that I'll bring to you serving as your president, in building those relationships with leaders in Congress, with members of Congress, bringing them over, inviting them over to the White House. Something that in Washington right now makes headlines because it hardly ever happens. And unfortunately, usually when it does happen, you have kind of the press release pre-written before the meeting even happens, and you go out to the press. The whole thing is almost scripted, only to affirm the divisions in the positions that may be held on whatever the issue may be, rather than people coming in with a really good faith intent and effort to start to work together. This is what I'll change. It's not going to happen overnight, but it requires people coming together with that shared sense of purpose, that purpose of service to our country. I'm going to close on this second point, and as I do that, we have a little treat for you today. We have some of my mom's macadamia nut toffee here tonight, and there's a bowl that we're going to be passing around so you can get a little taste of what those members of Congress had that opened their hearts wide up. The second thing I want to touch on before we open it up to Q&A is the issue of the cost of war. The cost of war. I want to ask you if you'll share, anyone who wants to share, what do you think of, raise your hand, when you think of the cost of war? What does that mean to you? Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for taking what I'm going to say. The cost I spent 3 years.
Sorry, we'll give you a microphone so everybody can hear you.
Louder. Can everybody hear me?
We want to make sure we get you on the camera too, if that's all right.
Okay. I spent almost 3 years between Iraq and Afghanistan as a Marine in the infantry, and when I was there, I lost a lot of friends. Yeah. And you know what I didn't realize at the time, being just an NCO, is what exactly we were doing there. Yeah. We worked with a lot of the locals, and as far as I can see, they wanted us there, but we didn't really offer them anything that they couldn't have got from their local drug lord or the Taliban. So we were just offering them security when we should have been giving them education or something that maybe would have changed their mind. But the cost of war is not only money treasure, but people treasure.
Yes.
And at this point, since it started now, you can have people born in that year when it started join. Yeah. So I guess time and actual treasure.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for your service. Anybody else have anything to offer, add, share? Okay, good. I'm glad it'll make its way up to the front here. Don't worry, they're not going to eat it all in the back. Well, I think you really kind of captured the full spectrum, right? The cost of war is, of course, embodied by the sacrifices that are made by our brothers and sisters in uniform, those who pay the ultimate price, those who come home with both visible and invisible wounds, and by the cost and the hardship and sacrifice that's paid for by every service member and their families. There is a cost that is paid for by the people in the countries where we wage these wars. There is a cost that is paid for by every single one of us as taxpayers, the treasure that you're talking about. This commodity that we have that can never be repaid. I bring this issue up because in this campaign, and in every presidential campaign, but in this campaign that we are in, we're running to serve as commander-in-chief. Someone who very directly impacts these decisions related to war and peace, very directly impacts our foreign policy by setting it, by saying, hey, we need to go and be the world's police or not. We're either going to continue to wage these regime change wars, this new Cold War and arms race, or not. And this is why I'm running for president rather than staying in Congress, to be able to effect this change, bring about this sea change in our foreign policy. Because in every single respect, I have seen how the cost of war has taken such a tremendous toll on our country, and that we cannot begin to address all of the needs that we have in our communities here at home unless we deal with this cost of war. So what do I mean by this? In a very practical way, in Afghanistan right now, and it's important what you said. You served in Afghanistan, right? And you were an E6, is that what you said? I was just a sergeant. So you were a sergeant, and I didn't get to finish my entire tour in Afghanistan. I got blown up. Oh gosh. But even for the time that you were there, as you said, you didn't quite know why we were there. What was the objective?
About a month in, you just realize that you're really just protecting your friends.
Exactly.
You're not really accomplishing anything. Like, for instance, I didn't want to take
No.
here. We were there long enough to do the elections, and when we would go around to ask the villagers who they were going to vote for, at the time they were like, oh, we're going to vote for President Obama. So the disconnect between just tribes over there from the just how they drew lines after World War II.
It's totally different.
They just have no idea, and they honestly, when you told them who their president was at the time, they're like, well, is he sick? They're like, well, he's fine. So I don't know what we're doing over there.
Yeah. You didn't know what you were doing over there as a sergeant, as a leader of troops. But with the release of the Afghanistan papers recently, what we're finding is that even the highest level leaders, both uniform and civilians within our own government, over the last 3 administrations, couldn't answer that question. What are we doing over there? What does victory look like? What does mission accomplished look like? When do we know when we can bring our troops home? This is the problem. This is exactly the problem.
Just asked former Secretary Mattis about that too, about
I did.
Syria, and he was like, I don't know.
I did.
And that was from our deity in the Marine Corps, so.
Right. And that tells us a lot. That tells us a lot about the people who are in positions of leadership when they cannot answer the most basic question that even for us at a low level, as soon as we go in the military, you are drilled in and trained to understand, okay, what is the mission? That if your squad leader or platoon sergeant or lieutenant gets taken out, the mission has to continue. So at every level, you've got to know what that is so you can continue the mission. But yet we've seen through so many of these regime change wars that have been waged in this country and that are unfortunately continuing today, even our highest level leaders cannot answer that question. And this is so disturbing in the deepest way because of the cost of war and what's at stake. Because people's lives are on the line. Both those who wear the uniform as well as the lives of people here at home who are struggling and who are suffering because they're told over and over, for example, in places like Merrimack, New Hampshire, there's just not enough money to make sure there's clean water. Are you from Merrimack? You know what I'm talking about, right? Where the EPA is setting these standards that do not have the best health interests of the people in mind, and politicians are saying that there's not enough money to give to your town to make sure you can clean up these forever chemicals that have poisoned your water. But there are so many communities across the country who are dealing with this issue of water, which is the one thing necessary for life. How much more basic does it get than that? What to speak of if we're talking about education, if we're talking about investment in infrastructure, we're talking about healthcare. There's so many things that we really need to address here at home, and yet as we sit here tonight, we're spending $4 billion a month in Afghanistan. $4 billion a month. That comes out to $5.5 million per hour. Per hour. And for what? It's propping up a corrupt government, a country where they're dealing with still, as they have been for generations, tribal conflicts, things that we can't solve for them. There's a lot of big defense contractors who are making a lot of money off of our continued presence there and this continued policy. Rather than actually providing the leadership our country needs, is to say, hey, our interest is our national security, the safety, security, and freedom of the American people, and making sure our resources are actually serving the best interests of our people. As president, I would bring our troops home from Afghanistan, stop wasting our dollars in nation building in other countries when we need to be nation building right here at home, and ensure our security by having a more effective strategy, or an effective strategy, to be able to defeat terrorist threats coming from groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. We have amazing special forces teams who can go and quickly deploy, defeat a threat, and return, that don't require these long-term and indefinite occupation of our troops in these other countries. Exercising the foresight that we need in this country to understand that the regime change wars we've been waging have not made us any safer. That is a fact. That even as these wars are continuing today, Al-Qaeda is stronger today than they were when they attacked us on 9/11. And it has been because of our policies that's opened that door for them to continue to strengthen and pose a greater threat. So the bottom line is this: as we talk about the cost of war, this is the one area where individually the president and commander-in-chief has the authority, in fact, the responsibility to bring about this change. And this is my personal commitment to you, that bringing the experience that I have over my 7 years in Congress, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, meeting and working with world leaders and encouraging diplomacy instead of war wherever necessary and possible, serving on the Armed Services Committee, working with different military commands from around the world, serving on the Homeland Security Committee. This experience, combined with just my own personal experience as a soldier, of experiencing and seeing firsthand the terribly high human cost of war. I've deployed twice to the Middle East. I'm still in the National Guard today, now going on 17 years, bringing this combination of experience that's prepared me to be able to walk in on day one to fulfill that responsibility as Commander-in-Chief, where I will end these regime change wars, work to end this new Cold War and nuclear arms race, and redirect our taxpayer dollars towards actually serving the very real, urgent, and pressing needs of our loved ones and our communities all across this country. Putting service above self. Putting the well-being and the interests of the American people and our country above all else, ahead of profits, ahead of politics, ahead of all of the selfish, powerful interests that are unfortunately driving policy in Washington today. My campaign is a completely people-powered campaign. We take no PAC or lobbyist contributions, so that you can have the peace of mind that as your president, I work only for you. Only for you. And that we together, working side by side, can really bring about the kind of change that we need to see in our country. So I thank you for making the choice to spend your time here this evening, for taking that step forward, taking that action to be that change that we need to see. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Did everybody get toffee? All right, most importantly. All right, we've got a couple of microphones around. Would love to open it up for our conversation this evening. If you have questions or thoughts, comments, concerns. Yes, sir.
Thank you. In the past, you've expressed a degree of disapproval toward the Green New Deal, specifically regarding nuclear energy. However, by the year 2050, some energy experts are projecting that the world's first commercial nuclear fusion reactor will be up and running in Europe. As president, how would you keep up with these kinds of energy innovations, and would you support increased funding toward the development of our own commercial nuclear fusion reactor?
This is a good question, and you're right. The concerns I have expressed with the Green New Deal that's before Congress today, there's a few main ones, and nuclear is one of them. Another is fracking, and another is the federal jobs guarantee that's included in that resolution that I don't think is the right approach to take. But your question was focused on nuclear, and where I stand is we look at the nuclear power plants that exist today, and I support a moratorium that we should not build any more of those plants because they cost a lot of money. They take a long time to build, and they create an incredible amount of nuclear waste that poses a threat to the well-being and the safety of our country, especially given the fact that, as we're seeing, there's nowhere to put this waste in the country. So what we have is a bunch of temporary holding sites and facilities across the country, including some right here in New Hampshire, where if there is a natural disaster of some sort and there is a spillage, we have a very, very serious problem. I think it should raise a red flag amongst all of us to know that these nuclear power plants cannot insure themselves. They can't be built without us as taxpayers basically paying for their insurance policy. That's the risk and the threat that we face. Innovation in new forms of clean renewable energy is something I am a strong advocate for, and we should always assess all of these different things. Nuclear fusion is something I'm learning more about, but as we look at all of the innovations that are coming around, I'm excited because it's providing a path forward for us that's not only, yes, solar is a great opportunity, wind in some other areas. We have some areas with geothermal. There's research in wave-generated energy. There's a lot of different things that are coming about that I think we do need to be investing in. And I would take the subsidies that are currently going towards these archaic fossil fuel energies of the past and redirect them towards really sparking and encouraging those kinds of innovations so that we can transition completely off of fossil fuels and towards a new green energy economy. I think this places us in a successful place because we get wins on every account where we're able to better protect our environment. We are able to achieve energy security in this country where we're not reliant on things that are happening in other parts of the world. And it's more affordable. In the end, this getting off of fossil fuels is actually going to create cheaper energy costs for consumers here across the country. And this is something I'm personally very committed to doing. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you for spending so much time in this state. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Mark Boyd. I live in Bow, New Hampshire. I'm an AARP volunteer. And no, I'm not going to ask you about prescription drugs because we know you're supporting us and we appreciate it. But we do have a couple other issues.
Yes.
And one is Medicare provides affordable health care for 260,000 granted staters, and it invests $2.8 billion into the New Hampshire economy. Seniors and people with disabilities are depending on Medicare for affordable health care. Along with Medicare, if nothing is done to update Social Security, many believe benefits will be cut across the board by up to 25% by 2035. As president, what will you do to make sure that Medicare and Social Security is there to ensure granted staters and the citizens of this country can continue to live with dignity, health, and financial security as they age. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. These are two issues that are important both to our seniors across the country, as all of AARP represents very well in such a nonpartisan way, but it's something that all of us are concerned about. Preserving Medicare and Social Security, I think, is critical, but I think we've got to look beyond that to ensure the sustainability. With healthcare, I would expand it beyond just those who are currently eligible for Medicare to recognize the hardships that families and individuals across the country are facing in their inability ultimately to get the care that they need when they need it. We have a situation where we still have tens of millions of people who are uninsured in this country, many, many more who have some form of insurance, but because of the high deductibles, are finding themselves really to only have kind of a catastrophic plan where $15,000, $20,000 deductibles make it impossible for them ultimately to get the care they need when they need it. My vision for what our health care should be in this country, I think, would take us in a different approach in two major ways. And my plan is a little bit different from most of the other candidates running for president, in that I think that we need to have a guaranteed health care policy for every single American, while allowing still the choice and the opportunity for people, if they want to purchase a supplementary plan or a private insurance plan or stay on their employer's plan. We should maintain our ability to be able to make those best choices for our families. So this would also address some of the issues that exist with Medicare today, whether we're dealing with Medicare Part D or the donut hole or some of the other issues that I know some of our seniors are really concerned about and struggling with, and how to make sure that it is still affordable. By doing this, we are able to reduce the overall cost of what we as a country are currently paying for our healthcare system and increase better outcomes, so that ultimately our healthcare system is one that's focused on delivery of care for those who need it, rather than the greed and profit-driven system that we have today. On Social Security, we had a town hall the other day where there was a young man, I think he was 18 or 19, and he came and raised his hand and asked his question, and his number one issue on his mind was Social Security. I met a junior in high school today here in Plymouth who said he just got his very first official job where he's getting an official paycheck, and he's looking at how much they're taking out for Social Security. And he's saying that his teachers at school are telling him, it's not going to be there when you need it. It's not going to be there by the time you reach that age. And so he's saying, why do I got to pay for something that's not even going to be there when I need it? So this is something that I think crosses generations and people are thinking about. There are two big changes I think we need to make to begin to ensure that Social Security is around for him and those who will come after him. Number one is enacting it into law that the Social Security Fund will not be rated for any purpose, period. This is not an entitlement. This is something that every working American pays into throughout the course of our lives, so that we can have the peace of mind and know that it'll be there when we need it. The second thing is, I believe we need to lift the cap on Social Security, because as it stands now, I believe it's around $117,000 a year. Does anybody know for sure? It's somewhere around there. But basically, anybody who makes up to that amount of money, you'll get those Social Security funds taken out of your paycheck. But for those who make more money than that, they don't pay Social Security on any of those funds. And so what that really means is those who are the hardworking middle class in this country are the only ones funding Social Security. And those who, awesome, you've done really well, you're making a ton of money, and with your life, that's great, but they should also be contributing their fair share in their prosperity into Social Security. That would allow us to not only ensure Social Security's longevity, but also make it so that we can ensure that Social Security is actually able to give people what they need as you're living on fixed incomes. For example, the cost of living adjustments. I spoke to someone the other day who said he got the 1.6% COLA increase here, but he saw, I think he said, a 26% increase in the premium that he had to pay for Medicare, if I'm not mistaken. And he's saying, how does that balance out? The cost of living adjustment doesn't even come close to deal with the true cost of living that he and his wife are dealing with here in New Hampshire. Those are the first things that I would do to solve the problems and the challenges and the concerns you're raising. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Eric, and it's kind of a continuation of what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
I'm on disability. I just received my 1.6. I made, what was it, like $13 or something like that increase. But now I went to having a $260 a month copay. And it's like
On Medicare?
on my Social Security, yeah,
Oh,
my
got it.
disability.
Yeah.
I'm only making $884 a month, and when you pay $261,
Yeah.
that's massive. And so what I want to know is, I agree on the health care and support it, but can you please fine tune how, like you say, you want to keep subsidies, let people have their own insurance that they want to have, and that's fine, great. But is it going to be a point where if I make just $2 more a month, I now have a massive copay, or is it going to be,
Yeah.
how is that
Yeah.
balanced?
That's a really important point, both for those who are in the situation like you are when you rely on Social Security and disability, but also those who, let's say you have housing assistance or food stamps or some of the other social welfare programs that we have. I've talked to so many people, single moms, individuals like yourselves, people in different situations who are concerned about this huge gap where, let's say you get a better job, or if you're able to get a little more income, that you're faced with this point where you are between a rock and a hard place where you're screwed. Really. You can't, I talked to a woman, she has 3 kids, and she wants to get a better job. She wants to be able to make more money, to find her way to financial independence where she's no longer reliant on public assistance. But if she makes another $5,000 a year, which is just a few $100s more a month, then she loses her house, she loses her health care for her kids, and they lose their food assistance completely. I think that we need to reform and change these programs so it does not incentivize people to stay on them if you have the choice, that if your situation begins to improve, that it's a gradual process where we're walking hand in hand and saying, all right, the incremental increase matches the incremental decrease, and not to have that disproportionate loss as you're experiencing now.
Yeah, just for me, with my insulin, a lot of my medicines, over $3,000 a month.
Exactly.
I cannot afford to lose my health insurance.
Exactly. Because your life depends on it.
And even the average person, they can't even work a 40-hour weekend. Work a 40-hour week and still pay for their medicines. It's just outrageous.
Yeah. This is what Karen and I talked about last night when you talk about your insulin costs. All of these things are very directly linked together, that you would have to pay $3,000 a month
Just for my
just for insulin.
Just for my insulin, because I have a long-acting and a short-acting, it runs up to be $3,200 a month for my prescription, not counting my other prescriptions as well. So just that alone, I'm done for it.
Yeah.
I'm working just to buy my medicine.
That's right. That's right. This is the AARP's message to the nation: stop the greed, because it is greed that is driving up these costs. When we see how so many people are driving across the border to Canada to buy insulin because they cannot afford to pay that money for the safety and health and well-being of whether it's their kids or themselves.
We have time for one last question.
Yeah.
I'm a writer by trade, so I'll stick to the notes here. Question about bipartisanship.
Okay.
Vice President Biden has expressed a belief that since the election of President Trump, the Republican Party has dramatically changed, insinuating his presence in office has heavily divided the party and the country. There's an opinion that once he's no longer president, that the Republican Party will just snap back to be a more cooperative group. Do you share in this opinion that Republicans have changed thanks to the president's election? And do you believe that Republican representatives will be more open to cooperation should you be elected this coming year?
I don't know that I don't agree with his assessment. I don't think there's any magical snapbacks that will occur. I think that this president has had a divisive impact on the country. But I think, like the Democratic Party, the Republican Party is also very diverse. And what we've seen in Washington, and I've seen it myself with some of my Republican colleagues, some of whom disagree with some of the actions this president is taking, are afraid to say so publicly because there is a concern that they will lose power. That's really what's at the heart of this. It's not, that's really what's at the heart of it. And that's why I opened my comments in the way that I did, because so long as the decisions are being made based on this desire for power, either more power or regaining power or whatever the case may be, then we won't have representatives in both parties making decisions based on what's in the best interest of the country. That's really what's at the heart of it. And that requires action in setting a culture of leadership from the top, of saying we put country first. As leaders in this nation, across party lines, we put country first, period. As well as the kind of pressure and accountability that has to come from voters across this country saying to every one of your leaders, we expect you to put country first. Elected president, I won't be able to do that all by myself. It takes all of us. It takes all of us to bring about this change in the culture of leadership in Washington to one that is actually a government of, by, and for the people. And President Lincoln talked about this when he delivered his speech, "A house divided against itself cannot stand." Highly divisive time when he delivered that speech, highly divisive times now, and his words then apply very much to the challenges we face today, where he's telling us all, a house divided against itself cannot stand, and that's exactly what we're facing. He closed that speech saying, "We shall not fail. We shall not fail." He said, "If we stand fast, we shall not fail." He didn't say, "I shall not fail." He pointed very directly to who can prevent this division from tearing our country apart. It's us. It's on all of us. And that's where I go back to the Constitution. Those first three words, it's we the people. It's we the people. It's about us. And it's taking these words really to heart with the power and the impact that they hold. It is we the people who hold this power to determine the future for our country. It is we the people who hold the power to determine who we would like to lead this country, what kind of future we want to see. And it is we the people who our leaders in Washington are responsible to serve. It is that trust that we give to those leaders. And so those first three words are a reminder to us as much as they are a reminder to our leaders in Washington about who our democracy is all about. Thank you. You want to keep clapping. I know you do. All right, I want to take one last question. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
Oh, thank you. I'm getting elbows from my children. We recently have removed our child from, I might get emotional, from public school. And one of the many factors in that decision was the lack of funding to serve our child equally and adequately. And so I would like to hear a little bit from you on what you plan to do to bring more money to our public schools.
Thank you. Thank you for being here and bringing your family. Hi. What's your name? What's your son's name? Here. Nice to meet you.
The same concerns as well.
Gwendolyn, hi. Nice to see you too. Thank you very much. You know, so often we hear this refrain that our kids are our future, matching the action. I'm going back to what I talked about with the cost of war. And education is one of those areas where we are told time and again there's not enough money for special ed teachers for our kids. There's not enough money for the training that our teachers need to be able to best serve our kids in our classrooms. There's just not enough money, not enough money. This is where we've got to redirect our resources away from being wasted on stupid wars overseas and redirect those dollars towards serving the needs that we have here at home, like education. First, I think it's important that we have a Secretary of Education who is an educator. I would be worried if you asked me to lead troops in battle if I had never been a soldier before. It's not a no-brainer. It is a no-brainer, actually, to have a Secretary of Education who actually understands what it is to be in a classroom. That we have, unfortunately, for a long time through different administrations, we have federal policies being passed in Washington with regards to our kids and our education being formed by people who don't know anything about it. And so even with the best of intentions, you end up with a situation too often where teachers are saying, hey, I feel like my hands are tied behind my back, that I can't teach our kids in the way that I know they need to be taught because they're telling me from Washington, if we don't do this, if we don't teach to that test, if the scores aren't what they think they should be, then we lose more funding, and then it makes it harder for be able to do the job that I chose to do as a teacher. So it's both in providing the leadership and making sure that our education policies are best informed by the teachers in this country who are the boots on the ground, and then making sure that those resources are directly going to our classrooms where we mean what we say as a country. When we say our children are our future, we are dedicating all of those resources towards best setting themselves up for success in pursuing the lives that they choose for themselves. Thank you very much for being here and for raising the voices for your children and so many others across this country who feel that their voices are not being heard. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm going to invite Eric up here in just a second. He's going to share with you a little bit about what we're doing here in the final little over 2 weeks of this campaign. But just before he does that, I want to leave you with a final thought, because it's something I'm hearing more and more lately where people are saying, hey, Tulsi, I like you. I think you're smart, and I really wish that you could be president, but I just don't think it's possible. So I think I'm going to give my vote to somebody else who I think can win. How many of you heard this or maybe even thought this yourself? Right, that's how we got Trump. That is how we got Trump. Here's the thing that I want to remind you is that this is how we get to choose. That as voters in the greatest country in the world, that you shouldn't have to be left with the least worst option. That you really get to exercise your voice and your preference through your vote. You are the only ones who can do it. When I first ran for Congress in Hawaii in 2012, I was like lower than the lowest underdog status. I was polling at 3%, I think, when we started the campaign, running against someone who was very popular, who had all of the things that a political candidate would want. He had all the endorsements, he had the whole thing. He had just run for governor, he had been the mayor, he's very popular, polling, I don't know, near 90% or something like that. But even as many as people who came and told me the same things that I'm hearing lately, which is you're bright, you're smart, you've got a bright future, why don't you just wait 25 years and then come back? I knew why I was motivated to serve, to bring voice to our brothers and sisters in uniform, to our veterans across the country, making sure that we have leaders in Washington who are making informed decisions about the policies that impact all of us. I knew that my focus was on the voters, people who would actually make those decisions, not on the pundits in my home state of Hawaii. And that's exactly what I did. I went across the state and I told people, I'm applying for a job from you. You are the boss. You get to make the decision about who you would like to hire. Fast forward 5 months before the primary election, I thought I was making good progress. I was now polling at 20%. The front runner was polling at 65%. He was already talking to people he was going to hire to be his staff. He was sure he had this thing in the bag. He forgot the most important ones: voters, the people. And as a result, when election day finally came around, I beat him by a 22% margin of victory. Not a close call. And it blew the roof off what we had, like the Walter Cronkite of our news, local news in Hawaii. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he was crying on live television, both because he understood what it meant to have a veteran's voice in Congress, but because he saw the power of the people at work. It doesn't matter what anyone else tells you. It matters what's in your heart and the kind of leadership that you want to see, not for me, not for my future, but for our future in this country and the future for those who will come after. Thank you for taking this decision with the seriousness that it deserves. Mahalo.
Thank you, Tulsi.
Why don't you stand here in the middle?
Okay. So I am a full-time volunteer coordinator for Tulsi, and I'm incredibly inspired to work with this campaign. It's one of the best experiences of my life. It's honestly, I can't think of anything else I would rather be doing. And the reason is because Tulsi inspires me so much. And so I'm truly honored to be here with all of you in New Hampshire, because the way I see this is that we're trying to catch lightning in the bottle. We have 16 days until the election, and everyone in New Hampshire can have an incredible amount of power. What happens here has ripple effects across the country. And so we're about to have some other volunteers, hand out pledge cards. And the one side talks about some of the issues that Tulsi was just talking about healthcare, making healthcare available for all, ending corruption, ending wasteful wars, putting service above self, uniting together to make positive change, and honoring our nation's founding principles as enshrined in the Constitution. And that's another big issue. I think that what Tulsi represents are these first principles, these constitutional principles, and she's the only candidate that I hear that are prioritizing that and making that the focus. I hope that you will all fill out your name and contact information, and someone like me will get in contact with you. I would love to work with any of you. So what my role is to follow Tulsi around the state and knocking on doors. I'm knocking on about 200 doors a day, and I'm talking with at least 20, 30, 40 people a day, telling them, or having a conversation about what they're concerned about and about how Tulsi's ideas for addressing these issues. And I have such an amazing time doing this. And I really think that all of you would have an amazing time. So I really hope that you'll join us. And so on this side, it says take 5, tag 5, give 5, find 5, and vote with 5. So take 5 is to post on social media. Tag 5 is using the hashtag #StandWithTulsi. Give 5 is giving $5 or more to the campaign. And find 5 ways to volunteer. And that includes knocking on doors and phone banking and sign waving and a variety of other activities. And then vote with 5, which I think is the most important. If you bring 5 people to the polls, that has an incredible impact. And so I hope you'll all consider writing your name and contact information. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Good job. You too can have as much fun as Eric. Thank you again. Thank you again for being here, for your time. If you are leaving tonight a supporter, I am grateful. You can. Tonight and you're still undecided, I completely understand it's a big decision. I still ask you to share your experience here tonight with at least 5 people so that more people can make a better informed decision. I'm going to be here for a few minutes. If you would like to come and say hello or take a picture, I will be right here. We can line up on this side. I want to thank our law enforcement and security for being here and keeping us safe this evening. And thank you all for being here tonight. Aloha. Thank you.
May I don't know if you remember that photo. I'm Dan.
Yes.
It's in Merrimack 4th of July parade.
That's right.
Thank you for stopping.
Take our picture.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
What's your name?
I'm Jennifer.
Jennifer. Awesome. Right on.
There's no combination of words I could put on the back of a postcard. No song that I could sing, but I can try for your heart. And our dreams, and they are made out of real things, like a shoebox of photographs.
A lot of the times she's been asking everyone to raise their hand, and normally like more than
He gives everyone the time of day too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Glad you're here.
Sure.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for
Appreciate
being
it.
here tonight.
Of course.
You guys all seem to know about Rogan. I saw some pretty strong responses there. How are you?
Good.
Nice to meet you. I'm good. What's your name?
Russell.
Russell. Thank you for being here tonight, Russell. I appreciate it. How are you? I'm good. What's your name?
I'm Aiden.
Aiden. Thank you for coming tonight. Awesome. Appreciate it. Yep. How you doing?
Larry. How are you?
What's your name?
Larry.
Larry. Awesome. Cool.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it. How are you?
Kevin.
Nice to meet you, Kevin.
Heard you in Waikiki a couple of years ago.
Oh, wow.
So, thank you.
What were you doing out there?
Just on vacation. We try to go every year now.
Okay, good.
So
it's a good break,
it's been
huh?
a great time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming tonight. Thanks for your service. Good to see you here. Thank you. Awesome.
Please keep on talking about this Afghanistan report.
I will.
I don't hear anybody else talking
No,
about
it was in the news for a second and then it was gone.
Yeah, if you
It's
just put
crazy.
Afghanistan impeachment,
I'm
then
putting
maybe.
legislation in to actually have a commission to investigate this whole thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
We
Yeah,
need
please,
it.
Please stay on.
I will. I will.
Thank you.
Hi. How you?
To our state.
Thank you. What's your
Welcome.
name?
Michelle.
Thank you, Michelle. For coming tonight.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Thank you. How are you? Good to see you. Did I meet you earlier today?
No, you didn't, but it's
There's someone who looks just like you then.
Yeah, probably just a couple of us. It's refreshing to have somebody closer to our age actually related to us
Yeah.
instead of somebody who's 80 years old.
Way out of
Democratic.
exactly.
appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for your support. I appreciate it. Hi, you must be Gwendolyn. So nice to meet you. Let me shake your hand first. All right. And you are Finnegan. Nice to meet you. Do we get to take a picture just us first? Okay, here. You want to hold your sign up? Here we go. So awesome. Yeah, of course. Of course.
Oh, yes. I'm supposed to say hello from Tessa.
Oh, of course.
Tessa
Tessa's
and I
taken
are
great
friends.
care of us over the
Yeah.
last few days.
So I texted her. I said, we're on our way to see her.
Awesome.
She said, say hi. So
Awesome. Thank you.
She's passing by.
She's incredible.
She is. She and her daughter and Gwen are the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good. It's always good to have good friends, huh? We might try to get a better pen. Do you know if we have a Sharpie, Vince?
Oh, I've got another.
You got another one? This one's running out a little bit. There you go. Let me try to. Can I try to make this a little better? All right.
Hopefully that one works better.
I think so. There, much better. Does that work for you?
Yeah.
All right. What, would you go by Finn for short?
Yeah.
Finn? All right. Thank you. So are you guys homeschooling now, or what are you doing?
One in homeschool, one still in public school.
Okay.
So.
Well, I was homeschooled
Really?
all the way through high school.
Oh, really?
So was my sister, and we loved it.
Yeah.
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 He likes it.
He likes it.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out what to do.
Yeah.
For like month 2. But
Yeah. I know. There's so much more support out there now for homeschooling families than there was when we were coming up.
Yeah. We've got a great curriculum.
Good.
So
Good.
he actually has a distance teacher. So we're
Oh,
able to
good.
check in over
Perfect.
video, so.
Yeah, there's so many opportunities now. I'm sorry that you were in a position to have to make that decision, but
Yeah.
I wish you well.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can we
Thank
just do a
you.
family
Of
photo?
course,
All
of
right.
course. Here, why don't you get on this side? Here we go. Dad, you want to come on this side?
Thank you. You're
All
right.
right. I've done this a couple of times.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much.
Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight.
Good
So
luck.
nice to meet you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Great.
standing
Sorry to
up.
get emotional,
No,
but-
no. Bye, Gwen. Nice meeting
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Bye, Finn.
Hi.
Thank you so much for
Thank
speaking
you.
up. That was really.
Andrew Gentry, by the way. I
and-
forgot to say my
Yeah,
name.
it's okay.
Real quick, though,
Yes.
would you please audit the Department of Defense?
Yes, I've been pushing for that for years. We've passed legislation requiring them, setting deadlines,
Right.
and they failed to meet them.
Well, they don't want to.
Of course not.
And, well, you got to wear the uniform. That was an $8 billion mistake.
Exactly.
It's like, well, there's our teachers.
Exactly. I've been through, what, how many? 4 uniforms now? And
Yeah.
they're talking about changing the dress blues now.
You got to make them like a brain.
Exactly.
Thank
You
you.
know what I'm talking about.
Good?
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Really
Have a good
appreciate
time.
you. Thank you.
Back
We
to
are.
Vermont.
Back to Vermont?
Yep.
Right on.
We don't matter.
Spread
until
the,
March.
no, it matters though.
Oh, they've already decided over there. They just blindly vote for anybody.
You think so? We'll see.